But we begin in Christchurch, where a woman has taken to Facebook in a desperate bid to help find an angel investor to help her fix an earthquake-damaged home and save her from financial ruin. We've talked extensively on Checkpoint about onsolds, earthquake-damaged properties that were not properly scoped and or fixed by EQC and or Fletchers, sold in good faith and then purchased by unsuspecting buyers who believed the paperwork saying they were fine. If the work needed to fix the house now goes over EQC's $115,000 cap, the new owner has to pick up the tab. This is the case for Angela Smalley, who's in her 50s and plunged all of her savings, including her KiwiSaver, into what is her first ever home. Now, Angela bought the house because an EQC scope of works identified $6,000 in cosmetic damage. That was it. But as our reporter Logan Church discovered, the damage is now far more extensive. Angela's watching YouTube videos so she can patch up the rot and damage herself.
Angela Smalley bought this 3-bedroom, 1.5 bathrooms 1980s house last year in the hope it would be her forever home. At 53, this was the first house Angela, along with her son, has ever purchased.
Well, it did look perfect on paper. The thing is, it looked almost perfect in reality as well when we moved in here.
Angela tells me after the earthquakes, EQC assessed the house and decided that all damage would cost $6,000 to fix. She received that $6,000 to do the work, which she expected to be cosmetic, as part of the purchase. So far, so good. Everything was fine until wild wind and rain lashed Christchurch last year.
Unfortunately, we had a big storm last July, and that caused it to leak. The only problem is it was leaking on the ground floor of a 2-storey building. So the water had to come from somewhere.
And that somewhere was the roof. What had happened was during the earthquakes, the walls moved up and down, creating large gaps between the roof and walls. You could actually fit your finger in some of them. Those gaps were hidden by vinyl wallpaper and cladding. Over the years, water poured in.
The water then travelled through its beams, down its studwork, and was rotting the cladding from the inside out. So until such time as we started to look at roof repairs, we simply didn't know how bad this place was. This is earthquake damage that wasn't caught 7 years ago, now 8 years ago, and it had been leaking water into the studwork for 8 years.
But at that point, Angela believed the leaking problem could be fixed relatively easily. She went back to her mortgage provider, who lent her another $60,000 to make the house watertight. At this point, Angela owed $520,000 on a house she paid $465,000 for.
You know, the first couple of builders that came in said, you know, we can fix this for 50K. So we went back and we said to the mortgagee, how much can we get? We got the maximum they would lend in order to do the repairs to make it waterproof. It's taken 4 builders before we found one that was actually able to do the work, and then we found just how big the job actually was.
This is now a lot more than $6,000 EQC initially believed it would cost to fix the home. Angela went back to EQC to reopen the old claim.
Well, unfortunately, we started to actually get a full inspection of the property, and the repair bill at that stage was somewhere close to $175,000. I went back to EQC and reopened the EQC claim, and they at that point agreed that they would pay out what they could, and I've taken that to cap. So I've got all that EQC are ever going to give me.
Even though she is now drowning in debt, Angela still believed she could make it work and fix the house. But
we were ready to start, and we had to test for asbestos throughout the house. Unfortunately, every single room has tested positive. The bill to remove asbestos alone is close to $36,000.
Almost all options exhausted, Angela's taken to Facebook, asking for an angel investor to lend her the money to get the main construction work done, sell the house and get rid of the mortgage. And that work doesn't include things like painting, tiling and plastering. At 53 years old, that is something Angela is having to learn how to do herself on YouTube.
This is the first home I've ever owned, and I'm in my 50s. It wasn't going to be a situation where I could afford to do this multiple times until I retired. This is all I had. So financially, every penny that I've ever been able to put away in my lifetime is sunk into this house. So this is now my only way out.
EQC states that any repairs that go over cap can be passed along to your private insurer. It's spelled out on EQC's website. But Angela says given her home insurance policy only came into effect last year when she bought the property, everything you see here is pre-existing damage. In other words, she gets nothing. The weight of everything, the damage, the rot, the asbestos, is slowly getting too much. She has had to move in with her mum on the other side of the city, and her full-time job doesn't come close to covering the mortgage interest payments.
Every time we start something thinking that we are finally seeing the end of it, something else comes along.
Angela's written to EQC and their minister, Megan Woods, in the last month, in the hope of getting some advice as to what on earth she can do. EQC has not responded, and a staffer in Megan Woods' office referred her to the Residential Advisory Service. In a statement today, Megan Woods says the problem is the law is unclear whether EQC or the insurance companies are responsible for paying out beyond the EQC cap. She says the government will be sponsoring test cases to resolve the outstanding legal issues around where liability sits. EQC's Deputy Chief Executive, Renee Walker, says the initial scope by EQC on Angela's property was probably wrong.
That was an EQC scope that was done very early on after the earthquakes, and the scope was for cosmetic damage to ceiling and wall linings.
So EQC got that initial scope wrong?
It sounds like it from what has had to be done and was accepted as needed to be done after the rain event, yes.
The reason why we've got this problem now is because the initial scope was wrong. Could potentially every single property repaired by EQC or a property that was scoped by EQC initially eventuate into the same situation that Angela's found herself in now?
I couldn't say yes or no. What I would say is people need to make sure they are getting building reports done before purchasing properties. The good thing is, though, that EQC is still here and we will be here until the last property is repaired, so people do have an avenue to come back.
But that avenue is no longer there for Angela. The best case scenario is that she can sell this house for more than the mortgage and walk away with absolutely nothing. Mō te hōtaka o te ahi nei, ko Logan Church tēnei.